to our next speaker. Our next speaker of the day is Srijata De. She is an MSc second year student in University of Hyderabad. She has attended MTTS 2021 level 2, and her topic would be Furstenberg proof of infinitude of primes. Over to you, Srijata De.
Thank you. Hello. So the topic of my seminar is Furstenberg's proof of infinitude of primes. And this is a good time to start this presentation because we just spoke about primes. Now, we all know that a prime number is a natural number which is greater than 1 and cannot be written as product of two smaller natural numbers. Some examples being 2, 3, 5, 7, etc. It was once a matter of speculation to mathematicians if this list of primes is finite or not. And the title of my seminar, it's kind of a spoiler to say that it is not. There are several proofs of this fact. The most common one, which we are being taught usually, is Euclid's proof, which is very old, around 2000 years old. But the one which we are going to discuss today is due to the mathematician Furstenberg. It was first published in 1955. It's a topological solution of this otherwise the problem which is in number theory. So for the purpose of our proof, we need a specific family of subsets of integers, which we define as SAB, where A and B are integers. So how do we define it? We define SAB as the set of all integers, which can be written in the form A plus NB, where N is an integer. So N can take values 0, plus minus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 3, and so on. So over the next couple of minutes, we'll spend some time to understand what these SABs are actually like by asking a few questions and finding their corresponding answers. So for what values of A and B is SAB an empty set? Oh, it's quite easy to observe that whatever A and B are, SAB always contains the integer A. So it's never empty because A belongs to SAB. Now for what values of A and B is SAB a finite set? So what does SAB look like? It contains A and it contains A plus minus B, A plus minus 2B, and so on. So in order for it to be finite, no, this progression on both sides needs to be stopped. So if B is 0, that is a case when we will obtain a finite set as SAB. So it is finite for B equal to 0. Now extending this, SAB is rather the singleton set consisting of just the element A when B is 0. Otherwise, when B is non-zero and N varies over integers, you will get A plus minus B, A plus minus 2B, and so on, and it will be an infinite set. So from now on, we will continue to assume that B is non-zero, because in the current context, when SAB is a singleton set, and that is not of importance to us. So now can you list these elements? Like as we have been saying, SAB looks kind of like this. So it has A, and then on both sides, it extends to A plus minus B plus minus 2B, and so on. So what do you observe by looking at the elements of SAB? Well, to me, this looks kind of like an arithmetic progression, but you won't say it's an arithmetic progression. Like when we were taught arithmetic progression in high school, it had a initial term, and then there was a common difference in steps of which the progression proceeded. But here we don't have an initial term, but in the sense that the difference between successive terms is something fixed, I can call this an arithmetic progression of sorts. Now is the time to make an observation. So if A is 0, that is sets of the form S0B, are you able to see that it has more structure than just a subset of Z? So what is S0B? A is 0. So S0B consists of elements which are of the form NB, where N is an integer. So how do we usually denote sets of this kind? I would write BZ, which is all integer multiples of B, right? So whenever I say this, it, I think, strikes a bell. And you all might observe that there is indeed a structure which is more than just a subset of Z. It's an additive subgroup of the set group of integers. So with that idea, we go ahead. Now, is it true that SAB is the same as SA minus B? Well, of course, because any integer which can be written as in the form a plus nb can also be written as a plus minus n times minus b, and vice versa. So this is true. Now, from now on, for our purpose, we will assume that b is a natural number greater than 1. Why? We had already excluded 0 because singleton set as SAB is not of importance to us. So, and we are now excluding the negative numbers because there's no point considering a positive number and a negative number separately in place of b, because they give us the exact same SAB. Now, why are we excluding 1? Observe that Sx1 is equal to Sy1 for any xy in Z. Why do I say that? Because when you take b equal to 1, the common difference of your progression is 1. And the integers are spaced out with a difference of 1. So no matter what x you start with, if your common difference is 1, then you go in both directions to obtain x plus 1, x plus 2, and so on, and x minus 1, x minus 2, and so on. And what you'll end up with is the whole set Z. So that is also another extreme case, which is not very important in our proof. So that's why we also exclude that, and from now on, b will be greater than 1. Now, from the discussion till now, can you see that SAB has more structure than just a subset of Z? Now, you have already seen that S0B is something which we denote by BZ, right? Which is a subgroup of the set group of integers under addition. So if I write SAB as A plus BZ, it will strike a bell, I think. And A plus BZ is nothing but the coset of this subgroup BZ. And that is the additional structure that I was talking about. So now for a given B in natural numbers, what can you say about this thing? The union of the SRBs where R varies over this range, 0 less than equal to R less than B. So to see that, see what is SRB? SRB is the coset R plus BZ, right? That is elements which can be written in the form R plus NB. And now if you take any integer Z, applying the division algorithm, you can find unique integers Q and R that such that Z can be written as QB plus R, where R varies over this range. Now see that this range is the same as this range. So if this happens, then this Z should belong to the corresponding coset R plus BZ, because it is expressed in the form R plus some integer times B. So, and that is true for any integer which you choose. So no matter what integer you take, it belongs to one of the R plus BZs in this range, where R varies over this range. So Z belongs to just one of these SRBs. So if you take the union over this range of the SRBs, what you'll obtain is the set of integers itself. So that is what I was trying to say. Now, is it true that X belongs to SAB if and only if SAB is equal to SXB? Well, that's also an easy observation, because X belongs to SAB means that X can be expressed in the form A plus NB for some integer N. Now, what does that mean? That is the same as saying X minus A is equal to NB. So X minus A is a multiple of B, so it belongs to BZ. So now, since we have used this notation of cosets, so we will exploit that fact. So if you look at this, then you can say that the coset X plus BZ is the same as the coset A plus BZ, which is the same as saying that SAB is equal to SXB. Now you can go in the opposite direction by retracing the arguments in the opposite direction as well. So this is quite clear. Now let P be the set of primes. So what is this set? Union of the SOPs, S0Ps, where P varies over primes. So what is S0P? S0P is PZ, because we had seen that S0Bs are BZ. So S0P is PZ. That is all multiples of the prime P. Now, if we vary this over the range of all primes, the set of all primes, what we obtain is all integers which have some prime factor or the other. So when I asked you to find this, if you use the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, you'll be able to see that since every natural number greater than 1 has a prime factor, the only integers which do not have a prime factor are 1 and -1. So this union S0P, P varies over the primes, will give you the integers except -1 and 1. Keep this in mind. And so in the presentation, our top goal is to show that P is an infinite set. Now we have been saying that it's a topological proof. Now what is a topology? Given a non-empty set X, a collection tau of subsets of X is called a topology on X if it follows three conditions. They are: number one, tau should contain the empty set and the whole space X. Number two, tau is closed under arbitrary unions. And number three, tau is closed under finite intersections. So if these three properties are satisfied, then the ordered pair X tau is called a topological space, and tau is a topology on the non-empty set X. Now we'll define what is an open set. Well, basically any subset of X which is there in the collection tau is called an open set. And naturally, what is a closed set? The complement of an open set is closed. That is, a subset U of X is closed if its complement is open. That is, if its complement is there in our collection tau. Now note that since tau contains some subsets of X, it is a subset of the power set of X. Why? Because the power set of X is the set of all subsets of our set X. So tau is always a subset of the power set of X. Now we'll look at two examples which are very standard examples of topologies. The first one is tau1, which I define as it contains the empty set and X. And the second one is tau2, which is the power set of X. So we can verify from definition that these are indeed topological space, X tau1 and X tau2. So let us see. So first look at tau1. The empty set and X are both there, which you can explicitly see. And if you take a collection of sets from tau1 and you take their unions and intersections, since the only sets there are empty set and X, and you take intersections or unions of them, then you won't get anything other than the empty set or the whole space X. So it is indeed closed under arbitrary unions and finite intersections. Now for tau2, the empty set and X are subsets of X, so it all obviously belongs to the power set of X. So criteria 1 is met. Now, if you consider any arbitrary collection of sets in tau2, they come from power set of X, so they will be subsets of X. And if you take unions and intersections of subsets of X, you won't get anything which is not a subset of X. So whatever it is, it will belong to power set of X. That is why X tau1 and X tau2 are topological spaces. So now that we have looked at examples of topologies and defined a topology, let's move ahead and find one way of how to construct a topology. Given a non-empty set X, suppose script A be a subset of the power set, that is a collection of subsets of X, which satisfies the following conditions. The first condition is that for all X in A, there exists AX in script A such that X belongs to AX. So what does this mean? If you have a topological space X and you choose any point X, if it satisfies this condition, there is a set AX in script A such that X belongs to AX. Now that is true if you take any X in the space X. So if you take any point, you will find a corresponding AX. So that is the same as saying that you can write this space X as the union of sets of this form AX, where X varies over the entire space. So what we just said is this. And that is equivalent to saying that the sets in script A cover the space X. The second criteria which we want script A to meet is that given an X in X and A1, A2 in script A such that X belongs to their intersection, there exists an A in script A such that X belongs to A, which is contained in their intersection of A1 and A2. So if this is your topological space, say X, then you have a point X and you have two sets, namely A1 and A2, which are sets in script A such that X is contained in both of them, that is in their intersection. Then you will find a set A in script A such that X belongs to A and A is a subset of the intersection of A1 and A2. So that's all this means. So if these criteria are satisfied, then tau, which is defined as U subset of X such that for all X in U, there exists an A in script A such that X belongs to A subset of U, will form a topology on X. So how is tau defined? So if this is your topological space X, and for any subset of X to belong to tau, we first need U to be a subset of X. So here is something like this. If this is your U, and if you choose any X in U, then there should exist an A in script A such that X belongs to A and A is a subset of U. So that is how tau is defined. Now it's quite easy to prove that tau indeed forms a topology on X. It just follows from definition. So we'll just skip the proof. You can try this as an exercise. I'm quite sure that you'll get to it. So when this happens, this is quite a standard way of generating a topology. And this topology tau is then said to be generated by the corresponding generating set script A. Using this procedure, in this proof, we will construct a topology on the set of integers. So we take X as the set of integers, and in place of script A, we will name it as script B. What is script B? It will contain all the SABs where A and B are integers and B is greater than 1. So this will be our construction to prove that the number of primes is infinite. It is clear that script B is a subset of power set of Z because script B contains SABs. SABs are all subsets of Z. So if you take any element of script B, it will be a subset of Z. So it will belong to the power set of Z. So
Srijata,
next we will see.
Srijata, you have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So next we will see if script B can be used in this kind of construction. For that, we need script B to satisfy those two conditions we wanted to. So if we choose any integer Z and we see that X belongs to Sx2, which is an element of script B. And instead of 2, you can take any other integer, say 3, 4, etc. It doesn't make a difference because, we had observed that A belongs to SAB always. So X belongs to Sx, whatever integer you like. So because Sx2 will always contain X, X plus minus 2, X plus minus 4, and so on. So the first condition is satisfied. For the second condition, we have X and two sets SAB and SCD such that X belongs to their intersection. These are your A1 and A2, like in our construction. So what we want is to find an element B in script B. So if it is in script B, then it has to be of the form S alpha beta because script B contains elements of the form S alpha beta where beta is greater than 1. And what should be satisfied? That X belongs to S alpha beta, which is contained in the intersection of SAB and SCD. So to move ahead with this, we need to make an observation that if D is a divisor of B, then SAB is contained in SAD. Why? Because if D divides B, then B can be written as some integer k times D. So any element of the form A plus NB can be written as A plus NKD. So that is also an expression of the form A plus some integer times D. And intuitively, you can think of it in this way. If you consider A as 0, say B is 4 and D is 2, then S0B is 2, S0B is 4Z and S0D is 2Z. So 4Z is a subset of 2Z. So using this fact, we will go ahead. So if we have X belongs to SAB intersection SCD, then SAB is the same as SXB, which we have shown something just a few minutes back, and SCD is equal to SXD. So what does that mean? Now BD is a common multiple of both B and D. So B divides BD and D divides BD. So SXBD is a subset of both SXB and SXD. So what do we have? X belongs to SXBD, which is a subset of intersection of these two sets, which are the same as intersection of these two sets due to these equalities. So what have we found? Seems like we have found our desired alpha and beta. So your alpha is X and beta is BD. Now since B and D are greater than 1, BD is also greater than 1. So SXB indeed belongs to script B. And we have found this set B. So our second criteria has also been met. Now, since our criteria are met, we will define tau as Q subset of Z such that for all U in X, there exists Bx in script B such that X belongs to Bx subset of U, which is the same as in the previous statement which we had mentioned. So it's quite clear that every element of beta is an script B is an open set. Why? Because what do we mean by an open set? Any subset of Z which belongs to this collection tau will be an open set. So if you consider any B in script B, it will always be of the form SAB. So it's a subset of Z that is done. And it is non-empty. So we can pick any X from B. So if you pick any X from B, you can take this Bx as B itself, because it's quite trivial to say that X belongs to B, which is a subset of B itself. So every element of B is an open set, which means all of our SABs are open sets. Now, since P is, if you consider P to be any prime, then S0P is an open set. So it belongs to tau, which we have just seen. The funny thing is that these S0Ps are closed as well. So how? Let's see. Recall that you can write the set of integers as this union 0 less than equal to r less than p over the SRPs. Now what is S0P? S0P is nothing but the r is equal to 0 case of these SRPs. So if you take out S0P from these unions, you will be left with Z difference, the union of 0 less than r less than p of the SRPs. So now you have these SRPs are open sets because all of your SABs are open, and this is a union of open sets. Now we have seen that a topology is closed under arbitrary unions. So this is an open set, and the complement of an open set is closed. So we have shown that S0P is indeed a closed set. So S0Ps are both open and closed. Keep that in mind. Now, if P is a finite set, so we will prove by contradiction. So we assume that P is a finite set. That is, there are only finitely many primes, P1, P2, etc. till Pk, only k many primes. So what does that mean? So what will this union of P belongs to P S0P look like? Since there are finitely many primes P1, P2, Pk in P. So this is S0P union S0P2 up till union S0Pk. That is, it's a finite union. And we have already seen that this is nothing but Z difference minus 1, 1. The one which followed from the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, that these are all the primes, all the integers which have some prime divisor or the other. Now we will take complements on both sides. So by De Morgan's law, what we have is intersection P runs over P, Z difference S0P. And on the right hand side, we have the set containing the elements -1 and 1. So these S0Ps, as we have noted that they are closed sets. So their complements must be open. So Z difference S0Ps are open. Now, since we have assumed P to be a finite set, this is actually a finite intersection of open sets. Now, a topology is closed under finite intersections, which is inherent from the definition of a topology. So this left-hand side is an open set. So that means the right-hand side is also an open set. But that is the contradiction which we were aiming at. Why? Because it seems that each non-empty open set in tau must be an infinite set. Why do I say that? That is something which is inherent in the very construction of tau and the choice of script B. Why? Because what was tau defined as? Tau was defined as the collection of all subsets of Z such that given an X in U, you will find the B in script B such that X belongs to B, which is a subset of U. So B belongs to script B means B should be of the form SAB for some integers A and B, where B is greater than 1, because that is how we had defined script B with B greater than 1. So this SAB we have seen when B is non-zero, in particular greater than 1, then it's an infinite set, which we have seen in our first slide. So if you take any non-empty open set, which is there in this topology tau, then it will have an infinite subset. This is an infinite subset of U, right? So if it contains an infinite subset, it should itself be infinite. Hence the statement that each non-empty open set in tau is an infinite set. So turns out that we have reached at a contradiction. So what was the only assumption we had made? That P is finite. So that is not true. And we have proved that the set of all primes is indeed an infinite set. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Srijata. Any question? Any comment? Okay. So if not, thank you, Srijata, for this wonderful talk.
I'll mention my references.
Okay.
I referred to Kumarasan sir's video on this topic, which is available on YouTube. And I came across this in the lecture notes of my professor, Dr. Muthatu. So, yeah.
So we saw a topological proof of infinitude of prime